here before. So those of you who may be members or are here for the first time, the Global Chamber of Commerce is an organization that stretches across 590 plus regions of the world and all continents, as far as I know. Jem can verify that for me. So Jemima Jem is in Singapore, I believe. Is that correct, Gemma?
Yes, I'm in Singapore and sometimes I go back
So
to.
how many chapters are there? Is it 590?
Sorry.
In the Cross Global Chamber
We
of the
have
world?
525 plus metros
So
chapters.
525. So if you're a member or you're new, we stretch across the world. And as you see Nima in the middle of the screen, Nima is in Tanzania. And she and I met through the chamber. I joined last August, and it's been a delight to meet people across the world, which I do regularly through various associations. And in fact, being in the United Nations events last week, sharing the stage with Charlene here, brought together different organizations. So we were representing women across the world. So here we are, women across the world. And one of my passions is what I want to talk about today, which is the power of authentic relationships. Now, for those of you who know me, I've written a book called The Power of Authentic Harmony. And so you can see an indication of where uh, I see relationships should be. But let's look at the power of authentic relationships and what does that mean to us as women? And we do have one gentleman here on the call, Thierry, who always comes along, which is wonderful. And we live in a world of relationships. And so I want to start by just sharing my personal philosophy and then extend an idea to you, which is about a new Q. We've got IQ, we've got EQ, we've got SQ, spiritual quotient, we've got lots of quotients, and I want to talk about the relational quotient. But what is your relational quotient? Is it high or low or middle? Do you have great relationships with some people and not so great with others? Are there many difficult people in your life? Anybody want to put their hand up? Anybody got any difficult relationships in their life? Come on, ladies, me. Now, I'm going to try and throw a curveball here. What if I said to you, there's no such thing as a difficult person? Just think about that. There's no such thing as a difficult person. So let's think about that. How many of you are difficult? Anybody want to own up to being a difficult person? I don't see any hands rising. Sophia, thank you. In my experience of asking this question to different audiences, I might make you laugh that in America, an American audience, you're more likely to have, in 100 people, you're more likely to have 5 or 6 people put their hand up. If you're in a British audience, you might have 1 or 2. If you're in a Malaysian audience, which I lived in Malaysia for 4 years, nobody puts their hand up. Not because they aren't, but because they don't want to, they're not that bold. Now, if we said, how many of you know difficult people? Hey, the whole audience will put their hands up. So I want to set the scene by saying, what if there are no difficult people, but there are difficult situations? So when I'm feeling a difficulty in a relationship, it's me as well as the other person. And when we look at that as a possibility, and welcome to new people coming in here, we're talking about, are there any difficult people in the world? So if we say there are just different people in the world, there are uniquenesses which we may not agree with. And then we start looking at the situation between the me and the other person. So if we're looking for authentic relationships, we have to explore what authentic means to yourself, to me, to each one of you. So let's say there are different and unique people in the world. And therefore, looking at our relational quotient, we want to see if we can break that down and work out where are the glitches? Where are we? Where are we going into overflow of love or not quite so? And we're resistant because something difficult is happening in front of us. And we suddenly lose what we're going to say. We don't feel we can be honest. Or we may go the other way and start being slightly aggressive or stubborn, reactive. So what I've done in my book is to break down the relational quotient and take it into 4 areas, 4 R's. And these are going to be how we relate, how we react, how we take risks in relationships, and how we respond. So let me come back to those shortly. So my premise at the moment is that I create the relationships in my life. As I have a very simple value creation philosophy, which has just 3 parts. And that you'll find when you get my book, you'll find a chapter in here. And it's essentially a very Buddhist theory, but it's a very straightforward humanitarian theory. I can only control myself. So if I'm going to be authentic, it's only what I do with this other person or people. So the me has to be authentic. So we have to explore what that means. So our first authentic relationship is with ourselves. And of course, we're in different situations. We're in our familial situation, we're in our business situation, we're in our social situation, we're in our community situation, we're in our nation situation. We have different relationships to all these aspects. So how do we be truly authentic and as women in the world and as men? Thierry is here with us, but really focusing on women and women in the world. Can we be truly honest about there are no difficult people in the world, only difficult situations? Because we know that women have many, many issues in the world that we deal with. Charlene and I were dealing with that in New York last week. A lot of conversations about women don't get education, women don't get funding, women don't get investment, women don't get access to tech somewhere in the world. Are all those difficulties that we can't be authentic about? So that's what I'm inviting you to think about. So this value cycle is me, and I take me into every relationship. So if I understand my RQ, I need to understand the other person, because the second arrow is you and me. So the you and me is where sometimes the difficulty or the bliss occur. Now, I want you to think about the best relationship you have in the world, best relationships. You're in that second arrow. It's beautiful, it's magic. You don't notice any flaws in the other person. Everything, your best friend, it could be your mother, your sister, your father, your uncle, aunt, your boss, but everything goes smoothly and you kind of overlook the ripples because you built up this you and me good relationship. And then sometimes things can turn up which suddenly change that. But let's just think about the third arrow. So you've got the first arrow, which is me, authentic me. Second arrow, which is authentic relationship, and in all those different situations. And then the third one is the authentic we. And by that, the we, I mean the group that you're in. This group is a we, the global chamber, different associations, your community, your business. That's the we. So that might be multiple people. And when things go well in that authentic relationships, I want you to think about what happens when you have those authentic relationships in a business, for instance. It goes smoothly. Everybody's creative, innovative, understands each other. And so it empowers you to get into your me arrow and think, wow, I created this. I don't have any difficulties. I don't have difficult people. So remember, it's down to the me in each one of you. But now I want to just very quickly go through these 4 R's and then ask you for some feedback on these. So remember, the relational quotient is yours and yours alone. We may be bumping into people who don't have the same RQ as us, in the same way as many people don't have the same EQ as us. We have different levels of understanding because we're different people and we're different natures, we're different entities, we're different ages, we're different nations. I'm in my 70s, so I'm different to my granddaughter who's only 15. She has a very different view of the world to me, but we're both female. So we're things that are similar and things that are different, not difficult. Okay. So the first R, and you can write this down, is relatability. How do you relate just generally to people? So you might be introvert or extrovert. You might be a lover of nature rather than something else. How do you relate to everything about you? And you might, in your mind, think about those people who do provide some irritation or tension or difficulty in your world, and think about, is it easier to manage them when you're in a good mood, or is it not so easy? So remember, it's relatability. How would you score yourself 0 to 10? Whereas 10 is, I can relate to anything, however different or difficult they are. Remember, they are no difficult people. And a 0 is really disastrous. So you might be thinking, ooh, I'm a 5. So be careful with medium scores because they can go one way or the other. So that's the relatability. So the next R is reactability. So how do you react? What's your instinct? Do you go into stubborn, or I'm going to fix that, or I got to deal with the detail, I can't do anything else, I'm going to be bossy? What's your reactability? So this is much more about in the moment of change. So our relatability tends to be our general persona with people, while our reactability is often under pressure. So I designed this way of looking at men and women and look at how do men and women are different and how are women different to other women. So I use a very simple matrix, which is masculine and feminine, male, female. So if I could just focus on females, as most of us are female here, and this is about women leaders, how strong is the masculine or feminine energy in you? And I'm not talking about sexual preferences. Like the masculine energy is often, you're much more in your head. And I call this the magician woman. She's very quick to action. When things go wrong, she's going, I'm out of here. I can do this myself. I don't need people. And the female who's got much more feminine energy, and I make the difference between feminine energy and femaleness, she is much more into her building her castle. So under pressure, she can often react, protect myself, don't come near me, be careful, don't move the plates. And that reaction is inward rather than outward. And I call her my sovereign. Now, we all might be in a bit of a mixture of both of these, but the energy of the magician is action, logic, outward. And the reaction of the sovereign is inward, care, provide, nurture. And there's an overlay that all females are nurturers. But I want to explore when we sometimes see difficulty out there in the world with women, how do we judge that? How do we actually assess it rather than judge it? Because that's where relationships become inauthentic. And so what I mean is that I'm a magician. I'm a self-confessed magician. I do react like I have all the female reactive energy of nurturing. I'm a mother, grandmother. I love relationship building. But when I'm under pressure, I get totally distracted and I either disappear and do it myself, or I just shut my drawbridge away from the sovereign and just go out on the path of my own. So you might say, oh, she doesn't care. She's just gone off. But it's my reactive behavior. Now, remember, in the value cycle, I need to pull myself back. So it isn't down to somebody else to fix me. It's for me to understand myself. So in a world where we also have men who are masculine-minded and feminine-minded, we have the masculine-minded man, who I call the ruler, who's very action-orientated and on occasion seems very autocratic because under pressure, he needs to know what's happening now. He may appear to have no emotional reactability. And then the philosopher, who's like my Nelson Mandela, who thinks and feels, but can sometimes disappear in his cave. So your reactability is how you react and create difficulties against somebody else's reactive nature, which is different. Okay, so come back with your questions in a minute. Let's focus on relatability, reactability. So relatability is your general persona. Reactability is how do you deal with things under pressure? Because that's when sometimes we can say things that we might later regret, and it destroys a relationship. I don't know whether any of you have had the sadness to have a relationship disappear on you, destroy you, not be functional. I'm sure we have. And sometimes when they're with the most important people in your life, in your familial circle, it's very challenging. So we have to go back to remember that people react in different ways. We don't all react the same. So my third R is, and remember this is about building authentic relationship, is a riskability. Now, what you might think that is, I think generally is whether we can come out of our comfort zone or not. How much do we risk to be truly, totally honest, especially when relationships are not being authentic or we believe they're not authentic? And I'll be honest with you, I've wrote a book about authentic harmony. Being authentic is really important to me. And I have had a member of my own family, my daughter, and I love her deeply and she loves me and we get past it. But she said I was being inauthentic when I was visiting one time. And I was deeply, deeply upset. But I realized what it was. It was our different viewpoint on a certain subject. And I had to take a risk to be honest about something I wasn't sharing with her, which she thought was really, it was to do with finance. I'll be totally honest with you. She thought was me being inauthentic. Me, I was just protecting my own, my own inadequacies, let's say. So we do things from different ways. And so part of the risk is you don't have to take dangerous risks, but are you able to risk being totally honest? And if I threw that out to you generally as women in the world, what are we not being honest about when we are half of the world and we don't have control over half of the world? So I'll just put that out there. We can discuss this. So the last R is respond. How do we respond? And I love the word responsibility. You know, that idea of response bracket. Responsibility is our ability to respond. So how do we respond? So let me share a little story about me as a person who loves authenticity. I love harmony. And I love my mum, who's passed now, but there was an occasion where, having been brought up in a Catholic family, my mother was a convert Catholic, so she was very strident Catholic, let's say. But my kids were teenagers and they didn't want to go to church. And I felt they had to make their own decision. So I had said, that's okay. But my mum was very upset about this. And one time she was sitting in my lounge and I was actually standing up, which was kind of an advantage. She suddenly said to me, oh, I hear that Ben and Jem are not going to church anymore, in that very caustic, critical voice that sometimes mothers can use. And I was just about to sort of back down and say, oh, and I suddenly thought, no, I'm going to say my truth. And I said, well, I believe they're old enough to make their own decision, and that's the way it is. Would you like a cup of tea? And she sort of went, oh, yes, dear. And I smiled sweetly, walked out the room. And I was actually shaking because in situations like that, when you stand up to somebody that you have a long, loving history. But what I realized was that I was taking responsibility for my position on this issue. And I needed her to know, but I didn't need to go into a diatribe or a long discussion about it and get caught up in whys and wheres and what fors. And so I shut the conversation by saying something totally different, which like a cup of tea. It's a very British thing. You might say something else like, shall we have a glass of wine or a piece of cake? I don't really mind what it is, but it's a disruptor. So sometimes we hold on to difficulties like that, Dana. Yes, a cup of tea makes everybody moment better. But sometimes, especially women, I find sometimes we hang on to a conversation too long and we get embroiled in all they're not inauthentic, but things that maybe we can't agree on with somebody, and it can destroy relationships. So I hope that's a point, and it obviously depends on your own nature. But I found that it's sometimes we're not honest enough to say how we see something, but it's the way we say it that can help this cycle of value continue, and that people honor us for who we are individually. So we may be more extrovert, more introvert, more detail focused, more, I'm dyslexic as well, so I'm very abstract sometimes. I'm very distracted when I'm under stress. If people know me well enough, they'll manage that. If they don't know me, they might go, oh, she's being inauthentic. And that starts gnawing at relationships. So I'm going to stop there because I want your view. So we've got the value cycle, I'm me, you and me, we. And then we've got these 4 Rs: relatability, reactability, riskability, and responsibility. So I want to open the floor up for you. And I love your view on these, and maybe whether it throws a light on a situation that you have in your life that you could manage differently from where you are coming from. Okay, so I open up the floor. Anybody like to put their hand? Charlene?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. It's my first time to really dive into this topic, and I'm just wondering how you came up with these categories and this a way of analyzing. It's just maybe it will help me to reflect a little more.
Well, that's a very interesting point because we each have a different
Mhm.
characteristics in that stuff. And remember, I said, I'm a magician. And I think
Mhm.
that's why I came, because I was exploring in my own life, why do I do that? Why do I react? And what do I hide away? So on occasion, and I'll be honest with all of you ladies, on occasion when I've had a female friend really not understand me, has led me to work out what the differences are. Because my passion is harmonious relationships. And I thought, even with my brothers and sisters, where am I different and why do I react like that? So when I was younger, I used to think, oh, my sister, she should just be like me. Why doesn't she just be like me? I think, oh, no, she isn't. And so when I started looking at this matrix of the magician and sovereign, the ruler and the philosopher, it made me see in people I know um, that that's how they were reacting. So my sister is much more of a sovereign from me. So her love is to build her castle and see all the detail in the right place. And on occasion, when I was under tension, I'd find that really irritating. But now I understand it's her honest authenticity. I love her for it. But I can't be like that. Does that make sense, Charlene? So if you think about the people around you, often it helps you to understand these, how do you relate? How do you react? And often the one, how do you react, is the indicator, because when we're under pressure and we do not the right thing.
Mhm.
So let me give you, before I get to you, Denise, and
Mhm.
the ruler under pressure can be a bully. The philosopher under pressure can be a wimp. The sovereign under pressure can be a victim. And the magician under pressure can be the bitch. And you have to laugh about your bad behavior. So let's take a look. Dad, I don't know who came up first. Denise, you're on my screen first. Denise.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the invite. I don't know where I got the invite, but I appreciate it. This is a great conversation to jump in on. What resonates for me is the taking the risk. In today's society, there's a lot of I think for women, but for any relationship, there's a risk in caring for people who may not reciprocate that care. And so and then all of the reactivity, like you're speaking, comes into play. Like, well, if you're not going to care for me and I'm the philosopher, I'm going to react this way. Or if you're not, and it becomes the relationship struggles, right? Regardless of my accountability to walk as a responsible individual in through the world. So the aspect is taking the risk. It's a risk to come and jump into this session with a group of women and give an opinion, right? Or say this is my thought. But I appreciate the model because I can be a little bit of in my head as well. Um, and but I've come to understand that not only do I need to care to show up and take the risk to show up, I also need to accept whatever might come back the other way. What good, bad, or ugly, I have to accept that um, that someone might not respond favorably. The other idea that comes to mind is that I have a great basis for relationships with women. I have longstanding friends from college back to 1979, and we do things, but the one thing that keeps us friends is the personal responsibility of all of us. I have 7 really great friends, and we're responsible for ourselves. We respect each other, and we also actively reciprocate. And so it's no longer a risk, it's just an opportunity to be more enriched by their friendship.
Thank you. That is absolutely brilliant, Denise. And I love the couple of extra R's there, respectability and reciprocity.
And I can't stay, but I just please invite me again. I appreciated this.
And I think that's really important because I have my original school friend when I met at 3, Katie. We still meet, but maybe once a year. And I think there is the bond of relationships is so important. I wouldn't say only more for women, but I think women do really, we live our lives through relationships, and that is well studied in terms of the difference between male and female, just generally, way back, Mars and Venus days, every book that's been about gender dynamics. So my subject is gender dynamics intelligence. Men are much more singular, yes, no, straight line. Women are much more circular because of our menstrual cycle, etc. So in there is that idea of authentic relationships. So Dr. Michelle, I think, and
Thank
then Dana, Dr. Michelle.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me as well. I agree with a lot of what Denise said. In fact, when I was looking at the 4 um, breakdowns, the reactability and the riskability, I kind of felt torn because it really depends on the environment that I'm in, um, as to how authentic I'm going to be, right? You know, maybe some professional environments I might be a little more professionally, and more relaxed environments with friends and families, I can be a little more authentic and I can take more risk, right? Because I don't have to worry about losing my job or anything tied to my money, right? I'm just saying that, you know, when I started trying to rate it, it was like, well, I'm a 8, but I'm a 5, but I'm a 3, you know, I was all over the place. And I don't know, Pauline, if that's normal or what.
Well, I think it is. And that's why I say, you know, situational changes are really important. So suddenly you're a member of Congress and you're going into the House or House of Parliament, that's going to be different. You know, when you go into your great grandparents' house and maybe there's huge tradition, or you end up going to your 15-year-old granddaughter's karaoke party, you know, uh, situations are going to be different. When women are in business, now one of my quotable lines is women mean business, but women don't need to be mean to be in business. Now, I'm not implying that men are mean, but we've existed in a world which is business-wise is quite aggressive and singular and logical, and we're coming in with this circular nature. So generally, women are more relational notion, the way they exist, than men. I had a classic where I was working with a sales guy who said, I'm really good at relationships. I said, oh, what do you do then? He said, well, I found out what the client needs. I go away, I find the answer, and I bring it back. I said, well, that doesn't sound to me like a relationship because it's a transactional relationship, but to him, it was a relationship. So again, we have to judge things, assess things, and don't make assumptions. Another chapter in my book, Don't Make Assumptions. We've never factored in these very fundamental differences of how we relate, react, take risk, and respond. And we haven't had that conversation with men. And if we're going to change the nature of the way we exist in the world as women and create what I desire, a joint custody world, we have to have this conversation that all the different ways of doing things are actually useful, productive. So we're looking at the baseline and then we look at the conversation. So I think your point is very important, that is being different in a different situation less authentic? It's only less authentic if we're not being truly honest or we're lying. Obviously, that is sometimes perceptive. But if we're really being truthful, as I was with my mother, I was playing a tooth out to her. Inside, I had lots of other perspectives going on. And in my life with her, I would use that technique on occasion when she challenged me to just say something and then cut out. I think what sometimes women do is we go on too long about something that is not possible to find a solution, and we need to be more tactical, but that's my personal view. I'm going to ask Dana, you had your hand up. Is there something you want to say?
Yes, I'm just so delighted to be able to join you, even if from the car today, Dr. Pauline. And we always bring relatable information as it can help us advance as women, as leaders, and whatever role in which we play. And I was thinking on what Dr. Michelle said, because my remarks were going to be almost the same. My response, reactability, riskability, all of the abilities, really is contingent upon the situation that I'm in. However, I do show up as my authentic self in every space that I am, but I might hold back some. So it's not a lie, it's not a distortion of my truth, but it's really gauging the room, gauging the audience. And for example, if there's a situation that I find to be unjust, particularly towards younger children, older seniors that are taken advantage of, my reactability is extremely high, you know, because of what I stand for in terms of wanting to protect the vulnerable. However, if we're in a board meeting, equal playing grounds, my reactability may be less because
Yes.
it's something that we're going to discuss, look at the pros and the cons, and come up with some type of solution where there is a win, hopefully win for the whole organization or the overall project. And then, so that's reactability. Risk, I'm not risk averse. I think if you don't take a risk, then you don't have a chance for a gain. So I'm a risk taker, but I'm also selectively cautious around it. I weigh the risk. Like, you know, if it's something, I weigh the risk, but I'm not averse to it at all. It's like you don't grow if you don't take the risk. And I appreciated Denise's remarks too about riskability, you know, depending on the group that you're in, but I'm not averse to that. Thank you for these potions. I'm really relational potions. I appreciate that. And I'm a magician too.
That's excellent. I love what you said, selectively cautious. I hope everybody caught that. I think that is sometimes there are many vulnerable situations that women go into today. And we know that in different cultures. So I'm working with Nima here in Tanzania, a very different culture to the one that I was brought up in or that I live in now. So, and I lived in Malaysia for 4 years. And although I've traveled to many countries in the world, when you live in a country, that's where you really understand the culture. And I live in Nevada, USA, so I don't know the whole of the USA yet. So when I'm working with Nima's young people in Tanzania, there's a totally different culture. But these fundamental ideas are basic. So our relatability, our reactability, our riskability, our responsibility. If we take those, then we place them in situations. I think women often need to be selectively cautious because we don't want to put ourselves into a dangerous situation, but we want to stand for truth. And standing for that truth without being aggressive, I believe, is what women bring to the world, even when we're standing up for major, major change. And I mean, creating major change, I've always felt that if women get really angry and fight, it's not our core nature. So how do we change a world which is in anger and fighting and wars and abuse? How do we change those things by not entering that angry state, but staying in that very strategic, authentic position? So I'd like to give you all an exercise as we just head towards the last quarter of an hour. Are you willing to do this, everybody? I can't see anybody at the moment, so I hope you're still out there. I want you to think about the individuals in your life who are most close to you or have the most impact on your life. It could be your family, it could be your family people, it could be your social connections, it could be your community, your local social community, etc. If you put a little figure on your page, that's to you. And I want you to think about maybe 10 relationships and just put them around the figure. So we've got little figure and then relationship 2. So if I take to my daughter, to my son, to my business partners, it could be to past energy in your life. It might be to relatives who are no longer with you but had an impact, positive or negative. But what are the ones that come up first in your mind that you often think about, that you talk to in your nighttime dreams or in your daytime? And they may not all be positive, but what are the top 10 that impact your life? And for each of those, I want you to score it 0 to 10. It's a very simple way of assessing what is happening around you. So your top 10 closest impact in your life. And if you're a 10, it's absolutely fantastic. That's the one that really I want around me all the time. But maybe there's some 5s or even 3s, but they're in my life and I have to deal with them on a constant basis. And then just look at the score of the 10. And then you can see if you've got 10 10s, then you're working in the right environment in all your situations. And now those 10 come from different situations in your life, but they're the ones that are impacting your life on a daily basis, a weekly basis. And when you can, then you can see where the drains are, where there may be too many 3s or 4s or 5s, because you want these to move up. Now, the other thing is the scores for these close people may change during an average day or week. Sometimes my husband really irritates me and the score might whiz down, and then he really does something amazing and it whizzes up to a 10. The same with my daughter. Almost people who are closest to us sometimes cause the closest sort of range of vibration. But it's a way of assessing very simply where is that problem area and where is the very positive. As you know, that everybody always says that one should be surrounded by the 5 most positive people in your life all of the time, and that you should only work with that circle. But occasionally we have to, there are people in life who cause some tension. And Dr. Michelle, she's got to go. Thank you for being here, Dr. Michelle. So Dana, your thoughts on that scoring?
My thoughts on the scoring is like, wow. I've been doing this activity at the end of every year for the most part for the past several years, taking an inventory, taking a stock of my relationships, and
Yes.
assigning a score 1 to 10. And if anything was 5 and over, then I felt it was necessary to continue to build and invest in that relationship if it was reciprocated. And if
Yes.
it was less than it wasn't high on my list, I didn't discard the person, but I did invest the energy. Now, that's not to say, I'm going to put this out and put myself on blast. That's not to say that if I haven't responded to a text or email, that that person's no longer in my life. It might just be a busy season, which I'm in right now. I'm finishing up at the end of this month my 90 days class that I'm teaching, so I'll have more free time. But that's how I would do that. And then I say, okay, these relationships 5 and older, certainly I'm going to invest in. And then certainly 7 and over, that means it's definitely a high reciprocal relationship on both ends, and spend more time. And even this morning on our prayer line, we were talking about the 5 people you spend the most time with are going to influence your life. And who are they? Because 15%, if we spend time with people that are progressive and supportive and successful in their endeavors and goals, then 15% of that will rub off on us. On the inverse, if we spend time with those who are not progressive, not focused, lack goals, then 30% in negative, 30% of their behavior and attitude will rub up on us. So it pays to invest and evaluate our relationship. I'm loving this. I'm loving it.
Absolutely. And I think for me, one of the things is that I love the word inventory and investing, because the other relationships we may have in our life are people that we have to care for. And that's something that, women do a lot. We may have an elderly person in our house who's becoming more forgetful, even going into dementia, things like that, where the situation becomes difficult, but it's only a difficulty because you love them and they are not the same as they were. It's like if somebody changes their characteristics, which is out of their range. Anyway, you understand what I mean. I think because women naturally are huge carers, we also take on that. And again, go back to the value cycle is how do I understand that I'm vibrating in my own value cycle. Somebody who's not well or is troubled may not be vibrating in the same way, but we can still relate to them in an authentic way. I hope that makes sense. Any other thoughts? Charlene, did you have any more thoughts about this scoring? Anybody else have some thoughts? Nima?
Thank you, Dr. Pauline. I was just listening to Dana and everyone else about the scoring part, and this just reminded me of some of the things that we do in our community here, how we can converse by bringing together the youth, men, elder men, young men, and also leaders in the village council leaders, to just discuss about the, for example, nutritional problems, for instance, that we want women to breastfeed exclusively, but we find so many women just not doing exclusive feeding, but using cow milk to give their infants. So by doing that, in our culture, it's difficult to discuss with men about such things. So I was just thinking how sometimes you can be speaking to your spouse, for example, telling them something, and then most of us women, we normally hold things back, not in a bad way, but it's for the best to find peace in the house, or to find peace with anyone. You tend to be quiet, so that, and hold what your real thought about that thing. So I was just rating myself, comparing to how I've just grew up with my brother, and how that I am the last one, and how you need to respect the elders. You don't need to say this. Sometimes even if you don't like that thing, and it has really brought me an effect in my own life. So I was just rating myself that how authentic I am with things, sometimes holding my thoughts back and not speaking them out loud, and how I react to things. I choose sometimes to be quiet. So it's just is it a good thing, or it's a bad thing? So I'd like to hear your views on this, Dr. Pauline.
Well, it is a very interesting point, this idea of we want to keep the peace. Do we not say things? I think that's a characteristic you find around the gender dynamics map. And if anybody wants to find out more about my work, I'm just going to I'll post out here my, if I can find it, if you find my YouTube channel, you will find some very interesting posts that I've done on this subject matter of women and how we can, what I call, crack the leadership code. But that's my YouTube channel. But I think women, regarding Nima's point, I loved your views, is I think women sometimes don't say what they want to say because they're in fear. And that's always dangerous if you're in a culture where there is gender-based violence, or there are the nature of men or women may be abusive, because if you're too quiet, then you can be put down, but you don't necessarily say what you want to say. Again, it's a careful balance of being honest, but sometimes not offending people in our honesty. It's like I have friends who will say things to me, and I think, oh, I don't think I would have said that to me. Because it's not something I want to hear. But that's my choice. An occasion, if I think I'm being put down, that's my choice to receive something. I think what we have to remember is every word we say can be easily interpreted differently to what we think we're saying. I can't remember the quote, but what you think you heard me say is probably what I wasn't intending to say. Words are very, very personal, and even the word harmony will mean something different to all of you. Being authentic will mean something different to all of you. And when we look at my archetypes, we'll see the differences played out in the way we naturally behave, how we naturally react. And though searching into oneself is a very important start in the power of authentic relationships. And my vision for all of you as present here in this world today is to think about how we strategically change the course of the world's future by looking for authentic harmony. It is my passion, but I feel that when women fight, literally fight and get angry, it's not our natural state. If we are strong and we state our views in strong, intelligent, smart, competent ways, that's when we get heard for who we are as human beings. And that when we do that, we have the possibility of a joint custody of the world. I've always said that women are very complex. And I have asked many men about this, and men always say to me, yeah, women are very complex. We love them, but we don't understand them. And so just remember that in the game of life of relationships, misunderstanding is something we can get past. Feel the energy. If the energy feels wrong, then change the course. But don't let people put you down, and don't let people abuse you. That's why I say with harmony, there is no harm. That's my golden vision in the world. Thank you, Dana, for what you said there. Thank you for leading out in the authentic relational discussion. I must run. I know we're now at as we come to the top of the hour, and I want to just say thank you to those of you who've come in from different parts of the world. It's absolutely wonderful to see you all here. Thank you, Charlene, for coming in. Thank you, Nima. Thank you, Sophia, Vanessa, Jem, Karen, Thierry, Marisol, and all those who were here before. If you haven't read my book yet, please do take a look and find it. It's either on my website, Corporate Heart International, or it's on Amazon. So it's The Power of Authentic Harmony. And just think about those relational quotients. And then my last challenge to you is to think about those people that you meet on a daily basis in whatever you're doing and understand what's similar and what is uniquely different. And that's where the magic is. Any last
Very
thoughts?
lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for
Thank
being
you,
here.
Eva.
Bye-bye.
And there will be a
Bye.
recording posted
Thank you.
out, so I'll send it to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Charlene. So good to see you.
Nice to see you, Pauline.
We'll get together soon.
Okay.
See
Good luck with your move.
you.
I'm moving next Monday.